Well, it is now time for our final speaker today. We have coming up for you next the incredible Alyse Nelson. Now, Alyse, if you don't know, is the CEO and president of the Vital Voices Global Partnership. As a co-founder of Vital Voices, Alyse has worked for the organisation for more than 22 years, serving as vice president and senior director of programmes before assuming her current role in 2009. Under her leadership, Vital Voices has expanded its reach to serve over 16,000 women leaders across 181 countries and territories. Now, previously, she served as Deputy Director of the State Department's Vital Voices Global Democracy Initiative and worked with the President's Interagency Council on Women at the White House. Elise is author of the best-selling book, Vital Voices, The Power of Women Leading Change Around the World, and is a regular speaker on leadership and global women's issues. She's spoken before the United Nations General Assembly, the Clinton Global Initiative, Fortune Most Powerful Women, Oxford Student Union, Women in the World, amongst others.
Yes, I had the pleasure of asking Elise to record a speech for us today. I've known her over 8 years now. And I also had the opportunity for a short conversation with her, asking her the questions that I've always wanted to pose to her. As an introduction to Elise, we have an incredible video that shows the amazing work of what Elise and her team at Vital Voices do and how important our voices are.
There have always been women creating change. Bold leaders who weren't always welcome.
It's been difficult for us to be heard.
I am aware of all the women who are still in silence.
From our beginning, Vital Voices recognized the need for women leaders to be heard, from community meetings to the highest seats of power. For more than 2 decades, we've searched the world for those leaders. We've partnered with 18,000 of them to build the skills and networks they need to soar. We've learned women lead differently, using their power to empower others, not themselves. And that difference is precisely what is needed now, more than ever. The world faces extraordinary challenge. But there are women leaders who walk among us with bold and innovative solutions, waiting for their moment. Now is the time to stand up. Be fearless in the face of those who say you can't. Be daring and unconventional because you can. Take a bold step to create the world you want to live in. At Vital Voices, we celebrate women leaders who dare to challenge the status quo. Together, we will solve the world's greatest challenges with bold ideas and bold action. Join us.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm Alyse Nelson. I'm President and CEO of Vital Voices Global Partnership. And I'm so thrilled to be here at the Voices of Leadership virtual gathering with all of you. Vital Voices is a global nonprofit organization. We search the world for women who have a daring vision for change. She could be an entrepreneur, like many of you. She could be a social entrepreneur. She could be a political leader who is working to rewrite the rules of her country. She could be a human rights leader who is calling out human trafficking and violence against women. They are all women who are searching the world as well and bringing together women, men, girls, and boys to make the world a better place. And what we do is we invest in them through training, through mentoring, a network of their peers, financial support, and visibility and credibility, so that the world knows that they are the leaders of today and of tomorrow. We've been doing this work for 23 years, really founded on the heels of the United Nations Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing, China, where our founder, Hillary Clinton, made that famous speech where she said that women's rights are human rights, and human rights are women's rights once and for all. Sadly, today, I think it's very easy to look around the world and see that that is not yet the case. We have not yet achieved women's rights and human rights. And so we still have a ways to go. In fact, the World Economic Forum found that it will take another 100 years before women are equal to men, before girls are valued the same way that boys are in our societies around the world. This is not just a third world issue. This is a global issue. It is an issue in all of our countries and communities and in our own backyards. Our work began in an era where there was really no data, no research that showed that investing in women was indeed a smart investment. Now, today, in 2020, we have all kinds of data and research. In fact, just a few years ago, McKinsey & Company reported that if women around the world could just come up to the level of men in terms of economic opportunities, we could increase we could increase GDP, global GDP, by $28 trillion by 2025. You imagine all the problems that we could solve with an additional $28 trillion. The problem is, though, is that, rights and opportunities are nothing if we don't have the power to put them into action. And that is the greatest unfinished business. What I've seen in my 23 years of working with women leaders around the world, thousands of women across 182 countries that we work in as part of Vital Voices, is that women lead differently. Women are not just an economic force to be tapped, as McKinsey & Company reports. Actually, they're far more than that. Women are a leadership force, one of the greatest forces, and that I think our world desperately needs. 2020 has certainly been a turbulent year. It has shown us that there are terrible systemic injustices, searing inequities in our countries and communities. We've been forced to look deeply at what it's actually going to take to create progress. Now, I firmly believe that the lessons and the leadership of women that I've worked with around the world is more relevant now than ever before. Our world is grappling with the catastrophic threat of the coronavirus. And although we've been dealing with it for months and are just beginning to see flickers of hope at the end of the tunnel of maybe a potential vaccine coming next year, we don't know yet the long-term consequences that this pandemic will have on our health system, on our political systems, and on our economy. The stakes have never felt this high, quite frankly. We've watched in real time the life and death results of leadership and action. And in the middle of so much uncertainty, what has become clear at this stage is just how important leadership is, how important good leadership is, and that there are certain leadership qualities that are making that sort of life and death difference. Empathy, truthfulness, collaboration, ingenuity, decisiveness are front and center of the leaders whose countries and communities are weathering this crisis best. There's another quality that many of these leaders share, and that's that they are all women. From Taiwan to Germany, Finland to New Zealand, women presidents and prime ministers have met this moment with strength and compassion. These leaders have demonstrated what we have seen over 23 years at Vital Voices, that women lead differently. They have qualities that they bring that are certainly not exclusive to women. But I think as more and more women enter positions of leadership, we've seen these qualities on display. Across countries, creeds, cultures, beyond age, race, economic status, at Vital Voices, we've seen time and time again that the women who fight for social progress embody a model of 5 distinct leadership traits. First, one of the things that we have seen is that women rise to leadership because they see a wrong in their community and they want to step up to right it. They're not chasing titles and positions. They want answers to the problems that affect their kids, their families, and the next generation. They are driven by a sense of purpose, of wanting to right that wrong. We call it a driving force, a sense of mission, and that propels them forward and shapes their vision for progress. Second, we find that women leaders have strong roots in the communities that they serve. They understand the problems of their communities. They understand how to solve them. They see the potential. They are deeply listening and learning, and they bring that incredible skill of empathy, being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Many people say that empathy may be a weak quality. Well, you know what? It is the greatest quality of leadership. That ability to put yourself into someone else's situation, understand how they are feeling and doing, and helping them to move forward. That is what true leadership is about. The third quality, which quite frankly, I learned from women in Northern Ireland almost 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, around the Good Friday Peace Accords. Women like May Blood, like Mo Molan, like Inez McCormick, who would always remind me when she was still on this earth that you don't have to ask who's around the table, but who's not at the table, whose voice isn't being heard. These courageous women across Ireland and Northern Ireland taught me this lesson of crossing lines that typically divide, forging unlikely alliances and making room for diverse voices in order to develop truly sustainable solutions. The fourth practice, and we call them practices of our leadership model, because they are learned from women, but also they are practices. They are not something that you are ever going to master one day. They are something that you will continuously work at and practice. And that is really the bold ideas and bold action. A lot of times we as women think that because our solution, our strategy, our big idea has never been done, it must not be right. But here's the thing. There's a real advantage to historically being left out. It means that we've had to think and do differently. And that difference, as I say, is precisely what our world needs. We don't need status quo leadership. We need big, bold ideas to make that breakthrough change. We've seen that women are not afraid to explore alternative methods and set audacious goals to achieve progress for their communities and countries. The fifth and final practice of our leadership model, these lessons in leadership we've learned from women across 182 countries, over 23 years, working alongside thousands of women, is that women consistently choose to pay it forward. They invest in and they mentor that rising generation. They are proactively setting in motion a virtuous cycle of support and solidarity. Because here's the thing, 90% of women who are mentored go on to mentor not one, but two or more people on their life journey and on their leadership trajectory. Mentoring is a strategy, and we have seen that it works. Because true leaders understand that power expands the moment it's shared. And the only meaningful measure of power is the extent of its positive impact on communities and our world. This year, we have seen a glimpse of what is possible if we elevate and expand women's leadership around the world. Because what has become abundantly clear in 2020, and I'm sure you would all agree, is that today's world isn't set up to solve the challenges of tomorrow. The greatest problems our world faces, from healthcare to addressing climate justice, tackling gender inequities, and rooting out racial injustice, especially here in the United States. These things are all deeply interconnected. We urgently need new ideas and new voices to lead us forward. But I think in the midst of this crisis, we must also remember that the most trying moments of our shared history globally have also been the ones that have led us, often out of necessity, to break through change. So we need to see this time as a time for global reset, as a time to pause. We have no choice but to do things differently. Status quo leadership isn't working. We have to dig deep and think about how we will be part of the future, what we will do, how we will rise to this occasion and rebuild a future that values all of us. And I have never been more certain that women leaders are that difference we need. For far too long, in particular, women of color have been sidelined, overlooked, and undervalued for the very reason that they are needed most in this moment. They bring inventive solutions forward. Because these leaders have been excluded, they've adapted. We've become resourceful, we've become creative, we've become innovative, and we will emerge stronger. Because certainly we cannot rebuild a world with conventional ideas. Vital Voices was founded because of women leaders and for them. When I think of the heroic women leaders who were critical to our founding across Northern Ireland and Ireland, they've never wavered in the face of challenge. Think of these women, of the women who came before you, of the things that they have done, and know that you are standing on their shoulders. These are extraordinary times, but the momentum that we have built up, certainly as a movement and Vital Voices as an organization, is anything but stalled. This year marks the 25-year anniversary of that historic gathering, the United Nations Fourth World Conference on Women, where the boldest agenda for women's equality was set. We've come so far since then, and yet we have a lot further to go to recognize gender equality, universal gender equality in every country across the globe. And here's the thing, our world can't wait, because just as women need to have their full potential tapped, the world needs the full potential of women and girls. In America, we are also celebrating 100 years since women gained the right to vote. But I am absolutely clear that it wasn't all women who gained the right to vote. We didn't fully build universal women's suffrage until much further along. Discriminatory practices continued to disenfranchise Black women in the United States for another 45 years until the Voting Rights Act was passed. And still, we face systemic inequities in this country. And I know that we face them everywhere around the world. These milestones remind us that progress is an ideal we must consistently strive for. It is a never-ending commitment and a lifelong aspiration. As the global women's movement continues to evolve, we must reckon with our own failings, confront bias, exclusion wherever they appear, and resolve to do better in the future. As women, we're called to keep fighting, keep striving until every voice is heard. The remarkable women that I've had the privilege to work with through Vital Voices are getting us closer to a more equitable world. With courage and compassion, women leaders everywhere are already playing a critical role in helping their countries and communities cope with this crisis and emerge on the other side stronger, more compassionate, more empathetic, and more willing to collaborate. And I certainly have no doubt that women's leadership will be instrumental in forging these new ideas that we so desperately need. I am thrilled to join all of you, and also in conversation now with my good friend Roseann, and a huge congratulations to you, Roseann, for all of what you have built and for bringing people here to collaborate and connect today. So thank you so much, my dear friend.
Wow, Elise, you never fail to inspire every time I hear you talking. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us here today. It really is very much appreciated. But like you say, you're not off the hook just yet. A couple of questions here, and probably of a more personal nature. So really, if you could tell us just a little bit about your own background and your own journey to your fabulous success here today.
Well, I was a 21-year-old college student 25 years ago, and I heard about that Beijing Women's Conference, and I knew I had to get on a plane and go, and I saved and borrowed and bought the cheapest ticket I could find and got there and was surrounded by extraordinary women and learned about issues that had not been in the mainstream. You could not read in books or newspapers. And I think when I heard Hillary Clinton speak and make that famous speech, I realized here's a woman who recognizes that maybe, you know, as First Lady of the United States, she doesn't have sort of that formal remit to travel around the world and raise the voices of women, but here she was doing it. And I recognized that she saw she had power and voice, and she could use it to empower others. And that's really when I found my driving force. I realized that, okay, I don't have the powerful voice that Hillary Clinton has, but I do have a voice, and I want to use it to empower and give voice to so many others. And that's really become my mantra, is use your power to empower, use your voice to give voice, use your boldness to embolden others.
And Alyse, would you say that you were always bold? Was that a trait that you had as a younger person?
Well, you know,
was it inspired by those women?
You know, yes, I'm always inspired by so many women. I mean, Inez McCormick, for example, the late Inez McCormick was an extraordinary mentor to me and taught me so much about leadership. And, you know, I practically lived in Northern Ireland in 1998 during those Good Friday Peace Accords and the Vital Voices gathering that happened there at Waterfront Hall. I remember it like it was yesterday, but truly now 22 years ago, yeah. Just hard to believe. So yes, it's these women leaders that I meet who embolden me. But I think also we have to always keep that spirit of youth, right? Because I think we have those bold, crazy, out of the box ideas before we understand the status quo. And I think it's really important to bring forth those ideas and tap young people as some of the greatest creative resource that our planet has.
Mm-hmm. And on that point, Elise, about young people, the old chestnut question in terms of what would you have told your younger self that you think might have eased or accelerated your way to the success that you've had today?
I think what I would say is continue to be passionate, curious, make sure you're challenged every day. And as long as you can answer those three questions, I feel passionate, I feel curious, and I feel challenged, I'm learning, then you're on the right path. And I think for me, I think I could always say that those were the things that I was doing, but I always wondered, am I on the right path? And I've been with Vital Voices, as you know, more than 2 decades now. And I think it's because I've always been inspired by the women leaders that I have had the privilege, quite frankly, of working with. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times young people think, well, I should move on to the next, to the next, to the next, because this is what my career might call me to do. But I think sometimes we forget that change, real change, if you care about making that change, it does take time. And I feel as though when I look back on where we were more than 20 years ago, just starting up Vital Voices, where I feel we are today, we are actually able to kind of fulfill the promise that I have always felt is there. And that is, as you may know, we've recently acquired a big building on 16th Street, which is just a few blocks from the White House, to create the first ever global embassy for women leaders. And it will open in the fall or end of 2021, depending on when it is that we can all be back together. But I think it's going to be a place where women will come together to collaborate and learn. And if I could just show my younger self, who was struggling to raise those initial dollars to help Vital Voices with some of our beginning programs, if I could show that young self a beautiful picture of that building and say, you know, one day you're going to be creating a global embassy for women leaders. So stay on the course. You have a lot to learn.
Wow, Elise, my goodness. And over all of those years, Elise, do you think, has your leadership style changed in any way? Or
oh, absolutely, absolutely. Because I think I'm constantly learning, and I think any leader who thinks that they're at the end of their leadership path, that's not a good sign, right? I mean, I think one of the differences that they've shown in studies is that women throughout their leadership path always ask for feedback. And we all know that the moment you stop learning, you've stopped growing, right?
Yeah.
And I think as a leader, you constantly have to be open to that. You have to be vulnerable. You have to accept that I don't know everything. And you constantly need to learn. And that's, I mean, at Vital Voices, I'm constantly in leadership school, constantly learning, how to be better, how to be stronger. And I think, it's an amazing organization. And I feel the weight of making sure that, I am delivering and that I am being the best leader I can be for the organization. But, I'm just because I lead a leadership organization doesn't mean I'm a perfect leader, right? It's a constant, it's a journey, not a destination, I would certainly say. But I think more and more I recognize that empathy is a real tool. I think people are seeing that as well, where it was maybe once seen as a weak trait, it's now seen as a real tool and an advantage.
Yeah. Okay, and finally, and I suppose at the conference today, it has been clearly emphasized that the need for great leadership, and like you say, authentic leadership and compassionate leadership and empathetic leadership, and these are all kind of traits and styles that are definitely more commonly found in women, and like you say, would have been considered in some cases a weakness, but not so much anymore. So the bottom line here is that we need lots and lots of female leaders. We need them everywhere, in all sectors, everywhere that decisions are being made. And I suppose something that concerns me is that a bit too, sometimes more frequently now, I'm hearing, say, younger women saying, I can see it, but I don't want to be it. So that's a bit concerning. So I suppose we need those women to step forward in their vital voices. So in your final couple of minutes, could you speak to them in terms of why it is so important that they do take that step forward into leadership?
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes women look at leadership, or they look at power, and maybe they say, I don't want that because power is dirty, power corrupts. But I think that one of the things that I have seen, and recently wrote a book about this that came out just last month, I think that women are redefining leadership and power on our own terms. And I've certainly seen that and learned that. And what I would say to those young women is I would say, leadership doesn't have to be that hierarchical, born into it, corner office. Leadership is about seeing a problem and stepping up to make the change. And it isn't your sort of father's leadership. It's yours to create. So if you want to be part of making positive change in this world, wherever you want to do it, as the CEO of a corporation, as an employee in a small, nonprofit, I think that we can all lead change. It's about seeing that problem and rising up to solve it. And we need young women. We desperately do. But it's not to say we don't need men. We need men as our allies. We need men to work alongside of us. I do not believe the world would be a better place if men were at home and women were the leaders and the heads of organizations everywhere. I think it is about both genders, all genders, working together. All of us in this together, bringing our strengths. And I think that there are incredible examples of extraordinary male leaders as well.
Yeah, and I think one of the phrases coming back through from the conference also is we've talked about building back better, and I think what we need to do is build back diverse, and we'll get there. Alyse Nelson, I'm so looking forward to getting over to see you in your new building at the end of autumn. But for the moment, thank you so much for being with us here today virtually. Really, really appreciate your time. And as always, inspiring. Alyse, thank you so much.
Thank you, Roseann. Thank you for all you do.
Wow. Don't you have lovely friends,
Yeah.
Roseann? Isn't she fantastic?
She is fantastic. I've known her about 8 years now, and she's been over in Belfast, and I've met her in Washington. and she really is inspiring. And I mean, she's fantastic women around her, and Hillary Clinton involved as well. So she is pretty amazing.
Well, I hope you do get to go and visit her in her new building. You're loving hearing what Elise has to say at home. Nicola McGuinness, love that phrase to ask yourself, do you feel challenged, curious and continuing to learn? You are a wonderful speaker, loving this segment. Thanks, Elise. Oh, a lovely one here from Sarah Quinn, who's currently on maternity and will be making a career change when she returns to work. This has really inspired Sarah today. She says, I now feel more confident that I'm making the right decision going back to work within a leadership role. So, hey, tick. Brilliant. Well done, Sarah. Good luck with that. Jane Taggart, our friend Jane, has said that she loves Elise's message of using our empowerment to empower others and to use our voice to give others a voice, which is a fantastic takeaway for us all to embrace. I just want to say we've got Conor McCann too, who's just said, great content, thanks to everybody here. How poignant the importance of empathy highlighted as we await the US election results, one of the many most notable weaknesses of Mr. Trump. So, yeah, I mean, fantastic. And you've all been helping each other on the chat today, which is better than we could have imagined, because big deal today doing this virtually for all of us, but it has been brilliant.
Yeah, no, and I'm delighted that we've been able to share these speakers, and with it being online, you know, we're able to bring in Elise from Washington, we're able to bring in people from London, and to share the expertise and the authenticity of them as speakers with everybody, I think is great. And I suppose one of the key things coming through for me is that, you know, the word brave has been used time and time and time again today. And I think that's what it is about. It's about being brave to take those steps, be brave to be yourself while you're being a leader as well. And also, again, I would appeal to young women to keep their focus and to be brave. We need more and more of those vital voices out there. Really, really important. And also, I'm going to give a shout out to all of our male allies. Women in Business have a very diverse board with fantastic men. Yeah. And the 17th of November is coming up, which will be International Men's Day. And we will be celebrating because, you know, we're talking about diversity. We need everybody together working to make a better society for us all.
Absolutely. Great thought to end on there, Roseann. And everybody has really enjoyed this conference. And that is the beauty of the virtual conference. We've actually been able to reach people who are on maternity leave and facing all of these big dilemmas, and they're the women that we sometimes can lose. And, you know, if you're wherever you were today, you've been able to join us in the MAC, and we can bring you speakers, as you say, from Washington. I can't forget that we did ask you to donate to Women in Business, and those who did, thank you so much. Your names were all entered into a draw for that case of Moet. I can now announce that the winner from Dale Farm is Caroline Martin. Oh. So congratulations to Caroline. We will be sending a lovely case of Moet to you. So that brings us to the end of today's incredible Voices of Leadership conference. We have learned so much from our excellent speakers. And Roseann, I'm sure you just want to wish everybody well and enjoy the rest of their day.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to our audience today for the great questions and chat, to Intertrade Ireland for their sponsorship, and to Sharon, Nora, Elaine, Sarah and Alyse for their important voices on this, on leadership. And finally, thank you to my fabulous co-host, Sarah, who I don't think I could have done this without. So thank you so much.
Well, I think you are incredible too. Maybe Anton Deck, new double act. Watch this space. Take care, everybody. Enjoy what you're doing, and remember to be brave, be bold.